Okay, I'm going to call our work session to order. Glad everybody made it okay. Nobody looks too worse for the wear. So welcome everybody, and so we'll get started here. I think we have one delegation, so Mr. Gary, if you'd read the disclaimer, please.
Thank you for your interest in addressing the Hamilton County School Board of Education. During your presentation, please address the board as a whole, not individual board members or administrators. Also, please do not present complaints or concerns you have about an individual employee of the school system. If you wish to voice these complaints and concerns, you should contact central office and ask for a meeting with the superintendent, since he is responsible for individual employees. Please limit your remarks to 5 minutes, and I will let you know when you have 1 minute left. You may begin, Ms. O'Marco.
Thank you very much. I'm going to be short tonight, believe it or not. I want to you've done this year, and as we are looking at Teacher Appreciation Week, I know it's not School Board Appreciation Week, but I know that we do appreciate you, and that the fact that you have been looking at this budget, you've been talking to people, you care about the teachers getting what they need, and I want to thank you for that, because I'm talking to the teachers, and they are desperately needing for us to make this happen. We need to be leading the charge. We don't need to be behind all the other large districts in the state who are already now going to be at 50,000 for their first year teachers. So as we work together, you will be seeing teachers hopefully going to the county commission meeting. We're working for that so that they can speak. They're writing letters, they're writing postcards. Hopefully we'll get some phone calls so that they can hear from the people in the classroom as to what they are experiencing, so that they can know it's not just you asking, it's not just the county office asking, but the teachers also are asking for this. They need this to feel valued. We want to follow that through, and they need not just our classroom teachers, our classified staff are really hurting, and we need them to be brought up to where they can survive and they can live on one salary. We do not need our people. The largest employer in Hamilton County should not have to work 2 or 3 jobs, and we need the people to recognize that. So I want to thank you for that, and know that our season gets busy this summer as we do professional development and trainings. I'm excited that last year we trained 16 trainers for restorative practice for use in your building through a grant that we wrote, and we're going to be training at the end of this month about 28 more, so that your buildings will have trainers that they can use in their buildings to do this with fidelity, that they are able to really look at how to do the practice of restoring our students in their relationships, so that the hurt and the pains that sometimes go with issues that are happening can be dealt with together. And that, as a Christian, that's what I look at too, Jesus came to restore. And lastly, I want to say, I'm sorry I didn't get to you guys beforehand. I'm leaving now because at our building tonight, we are celebrating our teachers and having an opportunity for those who aren't at meetings and events to come and have some pizzeria cordelier being cooked there and some Kona ice. And I want each of you on the board, if you finish before 8 o'clock and can run by there, come by, grab a slice of pizza or 2 and some Kona ice, it's already paid for, and say hi, and even if it's just a drive-by, that's fine too. Thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. O'Marco, and I can promise we're going to work hard being out here by 8 o'clock. I can promise you that. Okay. Committee chairs. I'll just start over at the end with you, Dr. Wingate.
So everything before you tonight, I believe, is a first read. So we will look to have a discussion before our June meeting, and then when we get to policies here for as we go through the agenda, we are going to take some time here. I know we got a couple questions about some things, so just give you a heads up on that.
Okay. All right. Mr. Connell, what's happening in Nashville?
Thank you. So, I probably should grab this. So, we've got a couple of things that I'm going to go through. I know that in past times we've had a full review session. What I'm going to do this time is in the June meeting, I'm going to review just quickly in my breakdown a handful of the laws that we've, like the major points of them. And then in that same meeting, I'm going to present each one of the board members with a list, a breakdown of what's changed and what we need to look for in Hamilton County. By doing that in the June meeting, it'll be attached to our agenda, and the general public will be able to see it. I do just want to real quickly take a step because there's been a lot of people asking questions about one of the laws that's come through. So I just wanted to make sure that we've talked a little bit real quick about the Army Teachers Law. I know that when it was signed into law just a couple weeks ago, the superintendent put out a statement. It was perfect. It exactly talked to it because in that bill as written, school staff members will be able to carry a concealed weapon, outlines of prerequisites in there, written permission from the superintendent, among others. Important note there because the presenting sponsor stated that the bill was intended to assist rural counties who are experiencing SRO and SSO staffing shortages. As Dr. Robertson stated, Hamilton County does not have a need there. We are fully staffed in our schools. We have no further need to arm staff members because we are fully staffed at the SRO, SSO position. I'd go even further to say that because of the partnership that Hamilton County Schools has with Hamilton County Sheriff's Office, that's why we're not only meeting the needs, but we're also a model for the whole state. We're the place to look to of how to make that partnership work to be correctly staffed. So I think it's important to state that, and I just also want to say again, thank you, Dr. Robertson and entire staff and Sheriff's Office for working together to make sure that we can not just be a model, but be right, keep our kids safe. So look for that to be included with the rest of the different items that have been addressed, and make sure that we have a chance to review all those and be excited about all our friends in Nashville.
Okay, good stuff. Thank you very much. So, Mr. Budget Perez.
We will address this a little bit tonight, I think, right? We were planning originally to come and vote on the budget that we've discussed. We're going to have a discussion about it more, and I'll let us discuss when we're there what the plan to proceed is based on conversations with the county commission and with the county mayor as of off the press, hot off the press right now. So we'll deal with that together as a group. So I'll hold on that for a bit.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Jones, brag on Tyner. It's looking good out there.
That is all I got. No further report at this time. But Tyner Academy is beautiful as it is continuing to be built. I don't know, it's just amazing to see it coming to fruition. So if you get a chance, go by there and see them.
Well, we have a ribbon cutting or some type of like.
Well, you won't be here.
This is not gonna happen until.
Absolutely not. Maybe you should have stayed 4 more years.
Oh. I want to receive a hand-delivered invite.
Girl, you can come. You can be my guest.
I can be your.
You can be my guest.
But if you go out there,
forward
But
to
you can go out
complaining
there
to
and
you
you.
go out there now, they'll put
I
a
look
hard
forward
hat
to
on you, but they'll
Yeah, I was
give
like,
you.
you can go out
they'll
there
give
and
No,
you
no,
a
no, no,
tour.
I know that. I've been to the construction site.
Okay.
I'm at the ribbon cutting. They're like the official grand opening.
You're welcome to come.
I will come
You
and
were a
bring
part
any
of that
complaints that I feel like leaving with you as an elected official.
That's what I said. You can come because you're a part of the bill.
Uh,
No further report.
She asked a great question. Her question was when students will be in there, and
Dr. Sharp, do you have latest update on Tyner you want to provide? Know you've been in those meetings more than I have. You may want to step up.
Yeah, we're excited about the progress occurring at Tyner. If you've been by there recently, it's really starting to look like a school, a brand new school. It's going to be a very impressive structure. There have been some delays throughout the project, but nothing that's something that hasn't been able to find a workaround, find an adaptation to help us stay close to being on schedule. Right now, we're looking at having a completion date by spring break. Right there, 1st of March, early March, we should get the keys to that building and be able to start moving in over spring break. So ideally, We'd like to get students in there before the end of the school year, but we're going to follow that closely and do all we can to make that happen, because those would be great for those kids, especially the seniors, to spend some time in that new building. So once school is out this year, as soon as school is closed, we'll begin some more demolition over there, and work will begin on the football stadium and all of that this summer.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Sharp. Okay, did I get all committees? I think we did. So let's look at tonight's agenda. I know that the budget is a big item on there, and I know we want to spend some time at length right now discussing that, but does anything else jump out that, rather than me going through each thing line by line, does anybody see anything that jumps out? Our field trips are all in-state. There's nothing out of the country there, so nothing unusual there. There is a couple things that's been added to the agenda, as you see, that's highlighted in red there. But let me just do that. Open it up. If anybody wants to talk about anything, let's throw it out there and we'll just talk about it rather than just going line by line. So, Ms. Rhonda?
Yes, I know that on the first read of these policies, 6.300, the Code of Behavior and Discipline, I really think it's time to review this, get feedback from our principals. I have talked to some of our principals, and some of these, I think procedures in here need a little bit of tweaking as far as they're concerned. I think some of these kids are allowed to maybe stay in the schoolhouse a little bit too long, especially at the elementary school level. I think we've talked about this, the behavior of some of the students, instead of allowing, and I don't know that it's even in the Code of Acceptable Behavior. This is what I never have been able to understand. Allowing these students who are misbehaving in the class and they clear the whole class out, that not only disrupts that class, but it disrupts the class where they go into. And in some schools, this is going on a couple of times a day. That's a lot of interruption to learning. I'm not sure whether that would be in this, because I think there's been some changes made to the Code of Acceptable Behavior, and I'm not sure we've approved. Do we have to approve all the changes to the Code of Acceptable Behavior since we approved it the first time?
No, we'll bring that back to you though, and we are reviewing it. So if you remember, we had this conversation this time last year. In the budget last year, we added some bridge classes and other options at the elementary level that are housed in schools but are smaller learning environments for our littles that are having a hard time adjusting. And so we're working on that. I think that, you know, some of the situations that you are describing aren't necessarily related to students like that. I mean, there are a lot of other things that would go into it, and you know, we've worked through with schools to make sure that we get placements moving faster. A lot of times it's red tape that holds some of that up, but what we're looking for is to make sure that kids are in the right setting, you know, for their best interest, for the best interest of the school. And that's why last year's budget, we added those options so that we can get kids into spaces quicker.
Well, I think it would be just better, just until all that takes place, to remove the problem student rather than all the other students who are trying to learn. I just have never quite understood that judgment. And then here on the student disciplinary procedures, I tell you what, I get a lot of calls from bus drivers. It says in here that, I don't have it right here in front of me, but I remember it said something about the behavior of the kids on the bus, that the principals are supposed to handle that. Well, I tell you what, a lot of this is not getting handled by principals. And I'm not real sure why. They don't take the behavior on the bus as seriously as they should. And I don't know if we need to beef up this policy with that. For the principals to have to explain why they don't, especially if some of these students have been written up 3 and 4 times. I guess, like I said, I just don't know if that policy needs to have a little bit more teeth in it as far as the principals, what they have to do instead of what they can do, maybe. Am I the only person that gets these kind of complaints from bus drivers?
No, and I think,
And so I just don't understand that, like I say, I'm looking for it right here. I've got the number of the policy.
6.3022, is that it?
Yes, well,
2121.
2-1, yeah, that's it, right there. And, because some of the behavior on some of these buses is really off the chain. And some of the principals, you know, the next thing you know, the bus driver puts them off the bus and thinks they need to be put off the bus. And next thing they know, we're right back on the bus. And then they complain to the principal, and it doesn't really seem to, they don't really seem to take it seriously.
I think traditionally the biggest complaints that we get is kind of what you said there at the end of referral comes from a bus driver to administration, and then the bus driver doesn't hear, you know, what consequence is or isn't followed up with the administrator, and that creates the confusion. What we can do, I mean, we typically in the summer have multiple meetings with our first student drivers and with our contract drivers. Mr. Groan's helping us out now on buses, and so I'm happy to get Brandon and Robert and Mr. Groan to, you know,
Well,
talk
I don't
about
think
that
it's
at
so
that
much
meeting.
the bus drivers as it is the administration. I think that's where I'm not understanding, because some bus drivers, you know, say some of the schools they drive for, the principals, you know, get right on it and handle it, and others, it's just kind of like,
Yeah,
so what?
if I said that, I didn't mean to say it,
Yeah.
that it was the bus driver. I'm saying that we need to get with the bus drivers, understand what their issues are, and then
Yeah.
they can bring it back and we can address it with principals.
Okay, I just didn't know if we needed to fix something in here or what, but,
I don't think it's necessarily a policy. I think it's just how it's getting implemented.
okay, thank you.
and could I add one thing? So, in the 23 years I was in that, I do not ever remember sitting down with the bus driver and collectively discussing what the rules would be that we would follow as a collaboration. And maybe that's something that's needed, that administration and bus drivers need to sit down and come up with. The thing I remember is that the bus drivers had a code that they wanted to follow, but it didn't follow the same code that the school followed for their regular classroom rules. And then we tried to explain that the bus was like a classroom, but they didn't. So there's a need for collaboration between the administration and the bus drivers to come to a midpoint, because so to answer the thing, sometimes they were wanting a little bit more than, you know, if they were in a regular classroom doing the same thing. But I understand, you know, for many of them, they own those things. So that's, but we also need to remember that, you know, riding a bus is a privilege, not a right. And sometimes the students are abusing that privilege, so.
So, Mr. King, you were the next light, so just keep going.
Yeah, so I have a few things. The first one, 6.2 on attendance, the thing that caught my eye was where we crossed out for driving age students, where we no longer are going to require good attendance for them to be eligible to get their driver's license. And I was curious why we crossed that out, because I remember that was one of the things that I could actually hold over older students, was that if they weren't coming to school, I wasn't going to give them the forms required to go get their driver's license. So I'm just curious why we've deleted that.
I'll defer to Scott and Shannon on this if.
And,
That's a question I have too, actually.
okay.
This is in draft, and so we haven't started the process of hashing it out internally, so.
All right. Well, coming from my standpoint, I'd like to leave it there rather than cross it out. It's not used a lot of times, but it is used some. It's, you know, and especially for those that have chronic absenteeism. It's something that you can.
So duly noted, Scott, as y'all look at that, you'll take that, you'll consider
Yes, sir.
that. Okay, go ahead, Mr. King.
All right. The other area under the differential compensation. So I wanted to bring up a positive note. You know, we're going into a new year. Many don't remember a year ago all the communication issues that had happened, and there were a lot of teachers upset and a lot of things, little bad feelings. And this year went very, very smoothly. I never had one complaint, and I remember getting a bunch of them the year before. So Dr. Brown, I just wanted to tell you from HR, thank you, because the added communication that you did and the added steps made things much easier to go by, and much easier for teachers to understand. So
Anything else, Mr. King?
that'll be good.
Ms. Robinson?
Oh, well, I just wanted to ask if on the behavior issue that Ms. Thurman was talking about, are our SEED coaches not helping in that area, or is it just a different type of discipline?
No, they absolutely are. I mean, I think what Ms. Thurman's referring to are situations where if something gets to a point where we need to remove kids for safety reasons, right? It's not a discipline strategy. It's not a discipline.
It's not it's not a disruptive in the
No.
sense of a child not behaving.
No,
Well,
I mean, you get in situations with some students where for
It's
their
beyond
safety
that.
and other kids' safety, you need to remove students. And so, again, that's not like a strategy we put in place. It's a step that you take to protect students.
okay. It's been a while since I've read the policy for 6.3. Well, 6.3021. So is there a policy specific in the discipline applies from the time they get on the bus to the time they get off?
In the Code of Acceptable Behavior, there's a section about, expectations on buses and consequences for buses. I think that what Mr. Keene is saying is taking it a step further of like when you think about at a school, they take Code of Acceptable Behavior, but then they have expectations in the hallway. Like what I hear Mr. Keene saying is that we probably aren't clear enough with our bus drivers or with administration about what those expectations on the buses should be. And Mr. Keene, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I think that's what I hear you
Well, it's
saying.
great that you're going to have a session with them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And board members, if I could comment a little bit on the relationship between the Code of Acceptable Behavior and your policies and procedures. By policy, you have delegated to the administration the flexibility to have a COAB that's designed to address things like what's going on buses, or how many days a student might face as a consequence for a particular offense. The procedures, like notice, opportunities to be heard, how a student has an appeal heard, those are established by policy. So the specific, I hate to say consequences, but that's what we're talking about. The expectations and consequences are spelled out in the COAB, and that's been given to the administration to develop based upon really the goal here of keeping kids in school and having them learn. The procedural issues that are either established by state law or by case law, those are incorporated into your policy manuals. That's what you mostly see here, right? The COAB is really is that table right there.
Okay.
Mr. Smith, can we go back to Mr. Keene's question about the driver's license?
Absolutely.
Okay, sorry, in that policy, 6.200, so at the bottom on lines 45, that was just crossed out because it is stated in the policy already, and where it is stated up at line 20. So up above, this statement was there, and so we had repeated it. So it's still there. It's on page 2, of that policy.
Page 3, I think.
Yeah, okay, yeah, page 3 may be on. And so on line 20 of that second page, it's repeating itself. So it's not removed from the policy. It just repeated itself. So it is under excused
I see what she's saying.
absences.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's right here under
She's
two.
saying
That's
that,
what I'm
that,
about to say.
that the edit eliminates a place where it's redundant.
Yes, that's the only thing.
So if you see on page 2, it starts on line 21, and then on the copy that you've got, the part that's marked out, it's on line 1 of page 3.
So like under number 6 on page 2, at line 18.
Oh, yeah.
says
Right, it was just-
and you go down to 21.
Right, it was just cleaning it up to make it that it's not repeating
Thank you.
itself.
I did not notice that. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Drake, Dr. Drake. Ms. Jones?
I do have a question though, like, why do, maybe, is this state statute that we have a say in them getting a license?
Yes, that's state law.
Okay, I just want to just clarify that for the
Yeah.
public, because it will be, somebody might say, well, why do they get to dictate? Because I was sitting here thinking that too, like, why would we have a say in that? But that's state law, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then I wanted to speak to the whole bus driver principal relationship. School administration response to bus driver complaints for behaviors. I agree with everything that you all said too, but I also feel like there's a piece of relationship there that probably should just be there. For me, when I was in school, but once again, I always go back to this, and I know I'm old now because I'm 40, soon to be 43 next week. But my mother knew my bus driver. My principal knew my bus driver. When they acted up, when people acted up on the bus driver would walk the child into the school and have a conversation with the administration about their behaviors. There was a relationship there. So even though you may convey what the COAB says or vice versa, I mean, you can have those conversations. I still think there needs to be a relationship there where the bus driver feels supported. Not saying administration is not, but where the bus driver feels supported in knowing that there's going to be some type of resolve. Which it just takes me back to the conversation that we had to have about bus monitors and all of these other things, because at another time we had children that were just, I was confused then about why people didn't know how to just get on the bus and sit down until you get to your bus stop. So I think we just need to make sure that there's ongoing conversation from all three, I feel like 3 adult stakeholders there, so the parents, the school administration, and the bus driver, as to what that looks like.
Good point.
And I think it needs to be consistency across the district, because no, Rhonda, I don't get calls about that, because probably the kids in my area probably ain't back on the bus. Just being very transparent.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Ms. Thorne?
No, I'm not, sorry. I hate to say that, but
Oh, okay, you turned your light off?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I forgot
All
to turn
right,
it
does anybody have anything else before we get to the budget? I know there'll be a lot of discussion there. Anything else on the agenda that anybody wants to point out or talk about before we go to budget? Okay, let's go to budget. Dr. Robertson, I'm gonna call on you, to just kind of update us on kind of what's going on and maybe make some suggestions of
Sure.
how we move forward tonight.
Yeah, so you've had this budget in front of you for a while now. What this budget represents is what we believe to be the needs of Hamilton County Schools in terms of our ability to continue moving academic outcomes forward, to continue to improve on compensation for our employees. We've taken a number of steps and investments to ensure that those things are happening. And so budget that you have in front of you is a representation of our administration's belief in what it's going to take for us to move this work forward. With that said, we've been having numerous conversations with County Mayor and his office, recognizing that this is going to be a tight budget year. We've been talking about this internally on our end. It's a tight budget year on their end as well, and so trying to work with county mayors to recognize, ideally the number may be here, but given the constraints of the budget, it may not get there. We've had some really good preliminary conversations. We had a meeting with their education committee. Had a little bit of a change today, and that change was we were asked to come to county commission meeting next Wednesday and present our budget. And I think that's a positive thing. I know many of you have talked to your county commissioners. I've had conversations with many of the county commissioners about this same thing of like, we want to support students, we want to support schools. All other constitutional officers are going to be asking for more money, and they've got a budget they've got to work within. And so what we hope to do on Wednesday is continue that conversation, work over the coming weeks. I know the mayor is set to present his budget to the county commission on May 20th. So obviously that's kind of an important date of us getting there by May 20th, but over the next week, 10 days, try to get where we are on the same page with the budget. We mentioned earlier that we were probably going to have to come back in June to vote on some kind of modification. And so after talking to, Mr. Perez and Mr. Smith and almost all of you, what I would recommend is that we push voting on this agenda until June. I think the county commission, if I'm thinking off the top of my head, I think the 26th is a Wednesday of June. Our meeting is before that, and so we'll know more on Wednesday. It may mean that we need to come back together as a committee before that June meeting. But essentially what I would recommend is we continue having conversations tonight about what's in the budget, answer any questions, go and present proposed budget to them on Wednesday instead of bringing a budget that's already approved by the school board. I think that just puts kind of right off the bat us in a tough place with the county commission, where we can go with a proposed budget and be on grounds of working with them to come to an agreement. So I'm not sure if that's what.
So what you would go to them with next Wednesday would be what we have in front of us now.
Unless there's something that comes out of conversation tonight, but my intent would be to bring the budget that was presented to you last month. I would maybe be helpful to have some more conversation about the flat raise versus the percent raise, to give us some clarity there of where you stand. But other than that, in terms of the dollars and the investments, yes.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that, about all the items in the budget, and then we'll decide if we want to remove this item from our meeting agenda. So, Mr. Perez.
Thank you. This has been, last year, I felt we had a very involved budget season with multiple discussions. This one has been a little different because we've been waiting on further information, knowing that our budget was going to be impacted. I just want to state that, obviously, I'm not crazy about, changing an agenda the day of, but I do think we're kind of walking in a direction that I don't think this year's precisely how we want it, but it will get better, which is a better relationship in conversation with the county commission. Those of us, and I want to publicly thank board members who were able to make, and I'm sure that those who could have would have made it, to the education committee meeting of the county commission. I haven't been here long enough to know if that was a first, but it was, I think, a good conversation there. Not always everyone in agreement, but all that to say, I think instead of coming and throwing a budget and having them counter it or just say no like happened last year or reduce it by a certain amount, it's great to get closer to an agreement. I still don't know that, we'll find that, we'll figure that out in June, but that, I want to encourage the community, I want to encourage us as a board to also be willing to stretch the commission's vision of the future. We've seen already in the paper as budgets are being voted across the state, Shelby County, Knox County, Cleveland schools are reaching that 50,000 plus 5% raises to their students. I don't know if Cleveland schools have reached the 50,000. But the move to really come and get closer to compensating teachers to better levels, I won't say we're still where they need to be, but at least increasing levels is happening statewide. And as we heard tonight, like, we want to make sure that we're also leading the charge and not falling behind. So I want to make sure that our community, our board are also willing to encourage our commission to come along in the same way. But I do think that having these conversations are possible. So thank you, and thank you all of you who've been actively involved in sharing with your commissioners what your priorities are in our community. So I just want to say that.
Thank you, Mr. Perez. Mr. King?
All right, so I guess I'm going to start asking the questions. The two I have are, and I was drugged the last time we had a meeting at home on Zoom and that, but what did we, what did we come up with the final for the teacher pay raise that Marco was talking about?
There's, in the proposal, there are a couple things. The thing that I was mentioning we need to get guidance about is there's a proposal of either a 5% across the board or a flat raise of $2,800. And then the other things impacting teacher salaries are a proposed step increase and a proposal to get our teachers that are in steps that aren't at 50,000, get them to 50,000.
So we have not voted on one
No,
of
sir.
those specifically, and so my question is on that, do we have to do that at a meeting before we finalize a budget? So, or can you do both of those at the same time? That you can, I guess.
We would need guidance in the vote of where you want to go, and
Right.
before we go Wednesday, I think it would be helpful to at least have an idea of kind of where people stand on, a percentage increase or a flat raise across the board. Obviously, if we choose not to vote on that tonight, I think typically we do a decent job of figuring out where y'all stand based on comments, but I would like to at least know where y'all are leaning in terms of percentage.
But
versus-
what is important to note is whichever way we choose to go, the bottom line is the same.
Right.
That's correct.
Right. And then my second area of question is that, and the document that's in our agenda is a little bit skimpy compared to what I expected. So it doesn't show to me how much we are putting into maintenance for next year with regards to specifically not capital projects and that, but the amount of money that our maintenance departments are going to use on schools, not through a bond, but through our budget. And last it was 2 million, and right now it looks like it's still 2 million, correct?
That's correct.
And so I'm going to speak out. We've got to get more money in there. February, we ran out of usable money for our maintenance department to make repairs with regards to plumbing, and it was late February. It might have been early March. But I started hearing the woes in February when I was visiting a few schools that needed certain things, and I was told that, they are now on a list because we don't have the money to do these right now, and that money will, and I talked to you, that money will come about in June, July, maybe as early as late May through our bonding. But, that leaves February, March, April, May, that things are happening. Brown Middle School last week had things go out. They spent 4 days in 80-degree weather, on something that eventually they got fixed. We've got to put, and I know Rhonda has been speaking about this for the last few years, and maybe we don't put 8 million in like we tried last year and then had to pull 6 of it out and put it in a bond. I felt like, you know, that was a PR thing, and it did lead, I mean, if you look at the bigger picture, it leads to more money, I understand that, but if you look at the focused picture, it handcuffs our maintenance department into keeping up schools and making sure that at this time we can have well-run schools. And so 2 million, personally, I'm not going to vote to pass this budget whenever the time comes if there's still only 2 million sitting in the maintenance. And again, I'm just one vote, so that doesn't matter. But we've got to get money into the maintenance. That is not going to be on a bond. That's going to be in their budget for next year.
So, a couple things. One, I think it's important to clarify what you mean by saying the maintenance department used money for capital maintenance. They did not, when they were getting towards the end of what was in their lines for supplies and things for them to do the repairs, we opened up more funds that we pulled from other areas. So what the 2 million represents is the ability to go in and, you know, completely replace a gym floor, or completely replace a roof. The things like chillers and boilers, like when those happen, we're bringing them to you, and it's either coming from fund balance or it's coming out of other things, right? And so I think it's important to clarify that. Second thing I'll leave you with is where the budget is right now for us to, like, to say you want more than 2 million in capital maintenance, it has to come from somewhere else, right? So we could say, for example, that instead of beginning teachers to 50,000, we want to take that money and put it in capital maintenance. We can do that, but this budget isn't written or isn't in a place right now where there's just $6 million sitting around. So we got to take it from somewhere else.
And I definitely don't want to take it from teachers. So you brought up fund balance, so let's talk about that for a minute. So what is our fund balance currently?
Yeah. Got a question for Ms. Thurman today, so I'll make sure I tell you what I told her.
Yep, I got it right here. It's 50.6 and undesignated and 41 and designated.
But what's the amount that we have to have?
It's 3% of operating, which I think comes to somewhere between 16 and 18 million.
The state doesn't really require anything, isn't it? Just suggested.
It's always been 3%, but they lifted that a few years ago.
Yeah.
But it's still best practice to maintain 3%. Because and for you board members, since the law changed, we don't want to have to use the county government as a bank.
We've had to do that once since I've been on.
And we don't want to do it again.
Yeah.
So, like, if that's what you're asking, Mr. King, if you're asking that for capital maintenance, like, that is an option to say if we want to, at the beginning of the year, go ahead and assign 4 million of that out of fund balance towards
Well, it would
capital
only be
projects.
2 million. We'd already be putting 2 million in.
Sure, if you wanted to say 2, I'm just saying, like, that is a strategy that we could utilize.
What percent?
I just know we've got to start getting that. So 3% of our, so if we're talking about $600 million, which is our proposed budget right now.
With everything.
Right.
I think that when law was written, it's GP, so it's like, what is that? I think, I don't have it in front of me, it's 560 something.
So 3% of that, so 1% is 6 million.
Mhm.
So 3% is 18 million. And we've got 91.6 million sitting in there?
Yeah, but it's the unassigned.
All right, so unassigned 41 million.
Yes.
Okay.
No.
Sorry.
Unassigned
50.
50.6.
Oh, so I had those backwards, okay.
But your point is we have like 3 times the amount of money that we have.
And to be clear, so 3% had been the state standard for many years. When things were tight fiscally several years ago, the General Assembly didn't make more money available. They simply said you don't have to keep 3%. Economics remain the same, it's just that we don't have to have that mandatory cushion. Hamilton County has historically maintained at least 1 month's worth of expenses, which is significantly higher than 3%, because the last time we had to borrow money, the county charged us interest.
So give me the ballpark figure of 1 month.
Well, take your budget, divide by 12.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So 5 million.
50
Or
50 million.
Yeah. 50
Which gets you to what your
million.
fund balance
So
is.
we're, right, and we're sitting at 50.6.
Mr. Keene, though, I think that, like, that is if we wanted to at the beginning of the year, say, let's set aside 2 million or 4 million from fund balance, I think we're in a place where if we put that into one-time capital maintenance issues, that's a reasonable request.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. King?
No, those are the two. I mean, last year I really liked how you had us kind of do a priority list of our top 3 areas. We didn't do that this year, but so number 1, teacher pay and steps, and number 2, maintenance are my 1 and 2, and we need to see that. And I know ESSER is going away, and I guess my other question, and it wasn't you, I don't think, it was Dr. Towns made a comment to Ms. Thurman a few years back, but that was when ESSER started, correct? When Dr. Towns and Dr. Johnson were...
I think there were two budgets probably that passed when Dr. Johnson was superintendent.
Okay.
Dr. Towns was still here.
And there was a comment made that positions that were brought in through ESSER money would not be carried on after the ESSER money ended. And my question is that still holding true? So positions that were hired through ESSER funds, are those positions going to continue, or are we reducing positions because that money's gone?
Not to put words into anyone else's mouth. I remember those conversations in 2 ways, that there were going to be one-time uses of funds, and then there would be things that we kind of beta tested that we would want to carry on, but we would have to do it in a way that it fit in the GP. So I'll give you an example of both, right? So we, through ESSER, were able to hire more nurses than we've ever had, right? We're at a place now where through attrition, we feel like we can actually, not that every school won't have a nurse, but we had, I can't remember how many in coverage, and then even more in PRN, where we could call on for part-time. So through attrition, we have lowered those numbers, right? Just because getting further away from COVID, there's less need for them. So that's an example of one that was like positions in COVID that we aren't continuing. An example of like beta testing things that we're now putting in GP would be things like tutoring and summer reach, right? Those were originated largely in ESSER, especially reach, but we've seen really good success. Now, we won't do them, we certainly will not do reach to the scale that we did, especially in 2021 and 22. Those were, I can't remember, 6,000 kids. Like, we won't do it
But
to
there's
that
not a need
scale.
for that many either this time.
That's right.
So.
So we were spending $7 to $9 million on summer reach. We will not do that again, but but reach is a program that we will put in GP. And so there were things that were positions in the budget, one-time spends, that weren't continued, and then there were things that we beta tested and said it's actually working. So it's either in the budget, or there are places where we have replaced positions. You know, this position was kind of an old position, not gonna use it anymore, put this ESER position in it. Does that make sense?
Yes, so I guess my question there, you've answered it in a way. So positions that were, and I'm talking about people, not programs, not things, but people that were put in with ESSER funds, if you found that they were a necessity, they'll be carried on, but if not, there's gonna be some that are gonna be removed at the end of this year, because ESSER ends.
We
at the
had
end of
several
this year.
positions that have ended. What I would reframe of saying, if we saw the return on investment, we figured out a way to get it in the GP budget. But there are multiple positions that we did not fund. And there have been old positions that, because of what we learned during, those beta testing periods of ESSER, that we've done away with because we weren't seeing as much of a return on investment with those positions.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Robinson?
Mr. Bennett may have answered my question. If we should have a catastrophic loss beyond 2 million, we have to borrow the money as opposed to begging from the commission?
I don't know that's necessarily true. So,
Well, that's the question, not a
well,
statement.
if we have a catastrophic loss, those words automatically to my mind trigger insurance.
Yeah.
So presumably, our membership in the trust would kick in and they would cover something, and they're usually very, very responsive. If hypothetically we had some loss that wasn't covered by insurance, and I can't imagine what that would be off the top of my head, that is why you have a fund balance. It's a cushion against unanticipated expenses. So we're fiscally secure enough to absorb something up to $50 million.
Oh, that's good to know. I have a question about the summer reach. Where is the item for the third grade retention?
Where's the item?
For the funds for that? Or is it included in the summer reach?
It's included, we still have all $4, which are all part of this relief funding for this year. It's the state dollars. Those run out this year, which is represented in this current. Next year, we have to fund the summer of '25 summer reach. Is that what you're asking about, where this year's funds are coming from?
Right, the line item, I saw the summer reach, and I heard you say that what the funds were several years ago, if I remember correctly, it's down to 3 million plus.
Yeah, but it's funded all there. It's funded out of federal dollars.
Oh, federal.
And next year, in summer of '25, they're funded by GP dollars, because those federal dollars have gone away. So there is a line item, it's just in the federal grants.
Okay, federal grants, that's where the funds are. Okay, thank you.
It's state and federal.
Mr. Perez?
So a few things that come to mind. One, you said you wanted to know kind of where we lean as a board on whether it's a flat raise or a percentage. Normally, to me, a flat rate, is normally equivalent to like giving everybody the same pair of shoes, right? Like some fit, some don't. People are doing differently. I wouldn't be as opposed to it this time, like a one-time thing. I wouldn't be as opposed. So I'm saying I would probably lean more toward a percentage raise, but I'm not opposed to a flat raise. As a one-time thing, I don't think it's a good habit because it creates compression and it makes people who have years of experience start looking at other places that would qualify those years of experience and pay them. And so I would lean toward a percentage raise. Normally, I'm not opposed to a flat raise. I do think it is important that when we talk about the raise, we're also talking about the step raises. So we just want to acknowledge publicly, we are talking about more than the flat. We're talking about the flat plus step increase. And so, again, hopefully, this is Teacher Appreciation Week. I actually was hoping we would walk out of here with a budget voted as a form of appreciation for teachers. But that, again, we also are in part of a community that decides these things, so it's not just us. And I encourage the community to voice their opinion. Second thing, and I do, because I do want to take a position on the increase of maintenance. I 100% agree. I think all of us 100% agreed last year that maintenance needed to be increased. I will honestly say my concern would be that we're going to increase maintenance, and then that's the amount that we're going to be told to cut the budget. Because that's exactly how I perceived it, maybe misperceived, but that's exactly how I perceived it last year, was exactly the amount that we increased maintenance. We were told we're going to put that away into a bond, and you guys will get that money one day. Here we are a year later, one day in the form of a bond.
It has not been bonded, correct?
No, it has not been bonded.
Just want to make sure.
And so my concern would be that we're going to do this again, and we're basically providing a means for saying, hey, we'll take care of that another way, reduce your budget by that amount. And I want us to say this is our operational budget. We're following the same rules. We're looking at that $60 million bond expectantly, and we respect the commission in that regard. And so to me, just keep that in mind, as I would be afraid that we would then lose that money in our negotiations.
Did you want to speak to that?
Well, I just remind, we did take that 3.3 million that's actually on the agenda tonight, where it comes into ours from that 6 million. So we
have spent it. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay.
But we don't control it.
But it wasn't bonded
We had to ask
to
for it,
get
yeah.
60 million back. Correct.
I told y'all.
I mean,
Last
We didn't
year
have a
I told
choice.
y'all
We didn't
don't
have a
trust
choice.
that.
You told us, I agreed with you.
I did. I told y'all don't trust that.
Mr. Connor?
Thank you, Chair. So I'm not going to dig it up the things. I will say, as Marco asked us, or as Marco was stating too, that I think the most important part is that we're talking about raises for the teachers, and that that's not off the table, and that either version gets the teachers that need to be up to 50,000 to 50,000 as is state law. I think that's awesome. I think that I concur that it is not great precedent to start at something that we've had people from District 6 come talk about, and certified employees about compression, and people that were paid a similar wage for 2 years of service and 20 standing next to them. So I think that's definitely something to keep in mind. I think that in my mind, I'm agreeing with what Marco said, that in this instance, and not setting precedent, I think it might be the right answer for the dollar amount raise. So I'll say that. I'll come back to the whole thing. So the whole voting on it or not. So I'm not opposed to new ideas or new ways of doing something, and conversation is key to good governance. It just is. Conversation and keeping it that way. Now, that said, us voting on a budget is our way of saying this is what we want to take to the county commission. This is the thing we officially do, because to steal from another phrase, until we do that, we don't actually know which that door is. Is that the front door or the back door? We don't know what we're sending. We don't know. The proposal is not voted on. This board has not said, let's take that there. So that gives me pause. Again, conversation is good, but in the meeting that we talked about that was so great with everyone there, my voice was asked to not be talking. So I didn't get to voice my opinion or about things.
You
so
weren't even asked.
I was asked not to talk. Dog got scolded.
You did.
So I say that because I think that we do need to send something officially, and it's known that the school boards in all of the state of Tennessee vote on their budgets and send it to their county commissioners. That's how we do funding. Us and 9 other states do it that way. So I think I have a question, I guess, but I'm not certain that we would know the answer offhand. Does anyone else do it that way? Does anyone else not vote on theirs until the county commission has? Or is it standard operating procedure for the school boards to officially have to give a document to their commission?
I'll defer to Scott. My understanding is eventually you have to vote on the budget before it gets approved by the county commission. What I said earlier, just to be clear, is they're most likely not voting on anything until June 26th. And so our June meeting is prior to them voting on the full budget. Is that
But you
correct,
also
Scott?
mentioned something about the mayor is going to be talking about.
He's presenting his budget, which would include ours, on May 20th.
So it would be helpful for him to know what we want before he puts in his budget, right?
And I think and maybe I didn't convey this correctly, I presented this just over our conversations as like, especially the pay, maybe not the details around maintenance and things like that, but this has the support of the board. Just from my individual conversations, I feel like there are 6 votes, maybe not Ms. Thurman, but 6 votes that would, we're gonna get her to vote on a budget.
To
in early
quote
this
Ms.
year.
Thurman, though, we still have not decided if the door is the front door or the back door.
So I presented as we have the support for this, so the mayor, commissioners that I've spoken for, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I understand your pause, I understand where you're coming
If I can add to Mr. Connor.
Before you do, because I want to continue on something you said, because I'll say the word that you didn't say. We were handed an ultimatum. We were handed an ultimatum about the money we asked for, and we were told how we would get it and the way we had to do it, and that was the only way that it was going to get passed. And so we're taking out our vote, we're taking out our voice, we're taking out us saying what we want officially, and not just we feel like it. Officially, these at least 6 have voted for this budget. So this is what the Hamilton County School Board wants. And that way you can take me to riot about it. I put my vote on, I put my stamp on what we want. It's not my feelings, it's my vote.
I think to add to Mr. Connor there, just on that point, is you have a general sense. A vote does say this is what the board feels or agrees with regarding the budget. So I'm still, I mean, it's a new way. I'm still okay with that. And maybe you can argue one or the other, but.
Well, what I would argue on the 20th is the mayor's doing exactly what I'm doing right now with y'all. He's taking a budget to the county commission to just discuss. Their vote's not till June 26th. So what, in the meantime, between now and June, when you put your stamp of approval, if we don't get to a place where the board likes, you still put your stamp of approval, and then we go to a continuation budget, in July. So
I just want to vote on writing half of it for them.
And to answer Mr. Connor's question, it's not unheard of the process as envisioned in the code is the board approves the budget, goes to the county commission, and the county commission approves the appropriations sufficient to fund the budget. But it's not unheard of for there to be discussions before that point where the county commission says, this is the amount of money you're gonna have. You need to work within these parameters. And in fact, there was a change in the law a few years ago because Sullivan County was actually having a debate over which set of numbers to use for the growth dollars. And as it happens, the school board had better growth figures than the county commission and had historically. And so the General Assembly literally rewrote the law to say whose numbers you got to use. Because in Sullivan County, the county commission was saying, this is the amount of money you're gonna have, figure out what your budget is. So the point here that Dr. Robertson was just making is the point that I'll leave with. It's intended to be a collaborative process. How much collaboration actually goes on is a function of the relationship.
So please, as the chair, can I ask a follow-up?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So in those situations where you're talking about discussion, where the situations you're referencing that there's been discussion, do they actually have a joint meeting between the school board and the county commission where both get a voice? Or is it more of a, we have to have closed door meetings and then our opinions are taken? Or is it, like, where do we go?
Yeah, that I can't speak to. I just know from talking to my colleagues around the state that, boards will say, yeah, we know how much we have to work with this year. How that's communicated, I'm sure, is done differently in each county.
I may not show it that well on the board, but I definitely have opinions and I like to tell them out loud. So I know that I'm sitting up here because the people of District 6 put me here, and I need to say their voice for our budget. And I want to make sure that the budget that's in front of them, I've said I approve.
Ms. Black?
I think I agree with Mr. Connor. I would like to take an official vote because I think it's important as elected officials that our constituents know where we stand and what we're willing to fight for and what our priorities are. And that's true for the school board and for the county commission. I want to give our teachers and staff the raises that will keep them here and not just settle for something crumbs, because I think it's important to fight for keeping our talent in Hamilton County. And a lot of people on our payrolls at the wages that they make work for Hamilton County Schools but cannot afford to live in Hamilton County. And I think that's atrocious. So I would like to send an officially voted on budget to the county commission because I think it's important that everyone know where our priorities are. And I don't believe in lowering standards before we've even asked. Because if we say that we need $20 million to give our staff the significant raises that get them closer to what they should be paid, then I think that's what we should ask for. Instead of cutting our legs out from under us before we even have a conversation. If they want it to be a collaborative process, which I'm not against, I would love for it to be a collaborative process for us to come to. I don't like pushing it to the last minute. I don't like waiting till the last week of June. I didn't enjoy that process last year. I don't think anybody did. But if they want it to be a collaborative process, then why aren't we having a joint session? Why aren't we coming together in a public place and having these discussions publicly between the school board and the county commission? If they want it to be collaborative and they want us to come to their committee meetings, then they can't tell us that we can't talk when we show up. That's not collaborative. That's not a conversation. So if we're not going to have a joint session and make this process truly collaborative, then I think it's important that our constituents and everyone in Hamilton County knows where we stand and what we're asking for from the commission. That's how I feel about the voting issue. As far as I would like to talk about flat raises versus percentage raises. I don't necessarily understand why it creates compression to have a flat raise, because a flat raise, like, the spread stays the same and everybody just moves up. It doesn't do this, but a percentage raise makes the spread bigger, right? Between lower paid employees and higher paid employees. And so I have some questions about this $20 million. Does that include step raises and a certain percentage?
It's, to be clear, it's a $32 million
Okay.
budget item. What we're saying is, to make it happen, it's an ask of, I believe, 21. It
Increase.
includes the 5% or the $2,800 flat.
Okay.
It includes a step increase. It includes getting the steps that aren't at 50 to 50.
Mm-hmm.
Also includes initiating some of the recommendations around the salary study that we've been doing for some of our non-certified staff. And then the last thing it includes was putting $1 million more into the strategic staffing model that would go directly to schools, and all that is the 32 million.
Okay. So can you tell me how much of that 32 million is the 5% or flat raise?
Roughly 20 million.
20 million. So that's where we start with, that's what we have to play with as far as that decision is concerned, because the rest of that, like the other 12 million, takes care of the step raises and all of the things that are built in.
So if we were passing just a flat budget that didn't require an additional ask, we would have $12 million to work with, which 12 million won't get you 5%. It gets you either 3% with no step.
Oh, no, I meant the rest of the 12 million of the 32 million, like take the 20% out. That 12 million pays for the step raises and everything, and the 20 million is what we're discussing. Okay, sorry. And I want people to understand what it really looks like in real numbers for our employees. So I pulled up the budget. We have an exceptional ed educational assistant. So an assistant in an ex-ed classroom makes approximately, in this school, $27,700 for the school year. I haven't tried to live on that in a long time, maybe 20 years. Just to throw that out there. If they got a 5% raise, they would get about $1,300. So that would be the difference if we gave them the $2,800 flat raise. That's a difference of $1,500 for our employees in Hamilton County that are barely making ends meet. That is a big deal. It is a big deal when we say, if we're going to do percentage raises, that's the difference. Because if you look at, a principal maybe who makes $120,000 a year, they get a 5% raise. They get $6,000. So does somebody who makes $120,000 already need $6,000 more than they need $2,800? Is that going to make a big difference in their budget when they're sitting around their kitchen table with their families? Or should we be thinking about our ex-ed assistants whose positions we cannot fill right now because we don't pay them enough? That extra $2,800 makes a big difference. It gets them closer to $30,000. So that's a big jump for people who are trying to work out their budgets around their kitchen tables. That's what I see the difference between flat raises and percentage raises as being, because I think it takes all of our employees to make Hamilton County Schools work. And I'm not going to sit there and say one employee is a more important employee than someone else. It takes all of our employees to make Hamilton County Schools work and to serve our children. And I just don't feel good about giving someone who makes $120,000 a year $6,000 while I'm giving somebody who makes $27,000 a $1,300 raise. That doesn't feel good to me. So that's where I stand on that. I appreciate, yeah. Yeah. But
You got several lines.
yeah, those are the only two things I wanted to say. I want to vote on this budget, and if we need this $20 million to get our staff where they need to be paid, I think that's what we should send to the county commission.
Okay. Ms. Thurman?
Okay. Well, I've been wanting an across-the-board raise for everyone ever since I've been on the board, I guess. So I hope it happens before I get off. There's a few things. Where are we in the discussion? When are we going to know about the bonds from the commission? When are they going to be bonding the money? Do we know anything even more now than we did before?
Not than we've known before, but conversations that I've had with the mayor's office and with their finance team, it's still this summer, so June, July, kind of tag team with this budget.
Okay. How much was our budget last year? What was the exact amount?
So I don't know if you have the presentation in front of you, but if you look towards the back.
Do we have it? Oh, okay.
So if you look at the operating budget last year, the projected was 532, and the proposed this year is 571.
Okay. Well, that's a huge increase, I just tell you. And I know, and Gary asked the question about the positions, and since I've been on the board, I don't think I've ever seen it that we get us to have a new position that we didn't think was a good return on investment, and we kept it. Every position we have, I think is the most important position we've ever had.
I
And
can
also-
bring you at least a dozen if you want me to.
But I know how this works. I've been here a long time, Justin. It's hard to fool an old fool. I know that we keep.
I didn't call you.
Well, no, I know you didn't. I know. I know that look. But I know also that when you start new positions, their old positions are still there. And I learned this trick from Jesse Register, that you leave the old positions there, and so when you get ready to hire new people, you say, well, that position's already been approved, so we're just going to put somebody else in it. When the truth is, we never did take it out before, so when we approve a budget, it's in that budget somewhere, and there's an empty space there, and so it's real convenient to put somebody new in there and say, well, you've already approved that in the budget. And we're going, where did that, how does that happen? Where did that money come from?
So this is, I'm
And-
sorry to interrupt you. This is where like false narratives get started. and
No,
I
no,
have
no,
to
no,
correct
this is
it.
absolutely a true narrative, because I've seen it happen many times. Now, you may not be doing it,
That's
but
what I
it has
want.
been done many, many times. So yes, it has.
It may have been an old trick, but it's not a new trick.
As well,
We're not doing that.
it's
Not a
happened many
current
times.
trick,
That's how the central office gets so bloated, is because we approve new positions and the old positions are still there. And I know it may have been bloated when you got here, but it hasn't gotten any better, I'm just gonna say. Because like I said, I remember when I used to walk down the halls over there at the central office, and there were offices, now we have an office in every broom closet over there. And those people have come from somewhere. But it's gonna be a hard sell when we see that we have this much more. Let's see, there's over $140 million more this year than we did last year.
No, ma'am.
Now-
It's
no.
38 million more.
38 million,
Yes.
okay, 38 million, sorry, I don't know where I got that. That's something else, I guess. But anyway, we have got to start, and I'm not gonna be here for another budget, but I've always said we ought to start with our priorities. And I think that Tiffany started this when she first got on the board. We talked about starting with the zero budget and starting to add things on instead of taking the budget we had and start moving things around. We should get our priorities in order. Our first priority should be taking care of our employees. If we did that in the beginning and then made everything, and then take care of maintenance is number 2, and let everything else fall under it, and the most important and all the way to the least important. And if we got down to the bottom and the least important didn't get funded, then there you would be. But we've never been able to do that. We just get in, it's like working on a train going down the track. Everything's already there, and we just try to fit what we want in with the framework we already have, and that's just not a way to do a budget. The budget just needs to be blown up and started all over again, so that way, because if we had been doing these across-the-board raises, since I've been on this board, you don't have to do them every year. You might do a across-the-board budget, across-the-board raises, maybe 2 years, and then the next year do 1%, and then a across-the-board budget, and then a 2%, something like that. But we would already have our office people that would be making a whole lot more, the people that make the school work. I've always said, I think we ought to figure out the priorities in school, who's the most important employees, who's the first person the kids are going to miss when they show up at school. Who's the last person they're going to miss? I mean, some people could not work all year long and the kids would never even know they were there. So the most important people are in the schoolhouse. Those are the people that the first person is a bus driver. The other people are the people who work in the office at the school. Those are the people that the kids know that are important. And the women in the cafeteria, those are the most important people to kids. And those are the people we really ought to take care of, and then let everybody else, and the teachers in the schoolhouse, those are the people we ought to be taking care of. And as far as people going other places for jobs, I don't know where some people would go get a job that pay as much as we do at some of our upper levels. That's just not going to happen, because they're just not out there. If there are, these people would have already sought them out. Teachers, on the other hand, like I say, I think we should have their raise there, take care of them where we need to take care of them, take care of the office staff, and then everything else. And I still have a problem with the transportation budget. This thing has absolutely exploded since I have been on the board. I mean, it's absolutely exploded, because we're transporting kids all over this county. And we should have never started this, but now we started. I don't know how you ever stop it. We used to never transport kids to magnet schools, and now we're taking them everywhere. And now we started the Future Ready Institutes, because if we just had one or two destinations for vocational schools, we wouldn't even have to do that. But I mean, we're just gonna have to look at some hard decisions to make, and I don't know that we're gonna be able to make them, or they're gonna be made for us. Eventually, we're gonna not be able to continue to expand the budget like we are. We're just not gonna be able to keep doing this. And it's, that's just how I feel about it. I don't know what we're gonna do. In future years, it's not gonna be my problem, but this board is gonna have to really have some real hard discussions and take care of the teachers first, maintenance second, and let the school personnel, and then let everything else fall under that. All these other programs. A lot of times when we hire people in the central office, all it does, the teachers tell me they're tired of hiring people in the central office because it gives them more paperwork. It says every time we hire somebody in the central office, we have to fill out more paperwork. It's almost like they're justifying their jobs or something. And so, you know, these are what I hear from teachers. We're not making teaching be fun for them anymore. You know, a lot of teachers love to teach. That's what they want to do. They don't like all this paperwork. They don't like somebody looking over their shoulder. They don't like somebody doing all that stuff. But let's take care of the teachers first, or we're going to end up losing the good ones that we have over some of the things that we are prioritizing that's not a priority for them or our students.
Okay, we're about to run out of time here. Ms. Jones?
I wanted to have good clarity. Did the raise would cover classified and certified, or just certified?
Classified and certified.
Classified and certified. Okay.
So everybody.
Because that was the classified was my big concern. There, I just was really concerned about that piece there. As it relates to the vote, I'm not going on some tangent about that. And I mean, the majority is gonna rule. I do struggle with for 9 years now. Am I going 9 years? 10 years. It's 2024. 10 years in August. But 9 years on a budget decision. That it's always this back and forth with county commission. Like, I just don't understand. And even now, like, now they don't want us to send a ballot. They don't want us to send the budget. You want us to come present. It's always something. So yeah, at this point, I'm just over it. So whatever the majority is gonna rule there. But I don't understand that, and I just want to go on record for understanding. I don't know why it's always this back and forth. For 8 years, 7 years, the process was we vote, we send it, we're done. Last year was a whole lot of back and forth. Well, I shouldn't say we were done. We vote, we send it, they send it back. They want a balanced budget, we send it back. They want about all this back and forth. Last year we sent a balanced budget, they sent it back and told us to give them some money and the balanced budget. Now this year, here we are again. So that is very frustrating. Very, 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 very frustrating. So I just have to say that, just to get it out. It don't matter to nobody in this room because nobody's asking to do that. They're not on the county commission. I have to just get that out. Very frustrating. So, yeah, I'm just very flustered and frustrated about that, and I'm over them all the time. It's something. Like we just are not. Like we just. I don't know. Whatever. But
Okay.
it's just very frustrating.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Jones. Guys, we're out of time for our agenda section, so we're gonna have to close this meeting so we can get into our regular monthly meeting. But I do want to be clear that we do not have to have a budget to the county commission until the 26th of June.
Unless we choose to vote tonight.
Okay. And then you're going to have further conversations with the entire commission this coming week. And you'll have a better feel for kind of where we stand or what we can expect. Am I saying that correctly?
You are, and I kind of hear some anxiety around like your voice being in this. We're the only budget that goes to the county commission that is voted on by a board. It's always your budget. Like the other part of it is the mayor taking budget to it, and we're part of that. But it can't go forward without y'all's vote. So if we go through the next few weeks and we don't get to a place where we stand or we can agree, you could vote on this exact budget in June, and we would take it to the county commission.
Okay. Okay, so our agenda session will adjourn, and let's take a quick 5-minute break and come back and start our regular monthly meeting.